Okay, friends, we're here. You see, you're at the right place
Hi guys.
because we got the promo up. Okay, I'm going to let you share tonight, and I'm going to get rid of the promo and take us full blast. So here we are. And of course, you're with me, Joe Firestone. I'm your host, and your co host, okay, is Lisa Theobald. And our guest for tonight is Scott Desnoyers, who you know as a Red Beret activist par excellence, traveling all over the country to do his activism. And most recently, he has been in D.C. And yesterday, he got arrested in D.C. So I'd like to ask him to talk about that for a while and what that experience was like. And then I'd like to move to New York politics and what's going on with the New York Health Act and get him to give us his analysis of the politics that are going on in relation to passage of the Health Act. And as some of you may know, Scott, okay, is newly enshrined or newly created the Red Berets chapter, okay, of the New York State, the state chapter. And I believe you are the chairperson of the state chapter, right, Scott?
I am. I'm actually really proud of that because it started a landslide. The New York chapter was the first chapter off of the original Red Berets, and from that we've now have I think it's like 8 or 9 other chapters that have opened up since then. We have one in Massachusetts, we have one in Pennsylvania, we have one in Tennessee, we have one in California, like two of them I think in Washington besides the original. So yeah,
Right.
that's an awesome improvement from what we had. It's just like snowballing, and more are going to sign up, I'm sure.
Okay, and we also have the chair of the Pennsylvania chapter here tonight because Lisa is, of course, the chair of the Pennsylvania chapter as well.
He said chair. I'm like, who's the chair? Oh, me.
Who's the chair? You're the chair.
Well, okay, so yeah, but with these things, it's like Scott's got legislation that's gone through twice, right? No, wait, 4 times. Hasn't it passed like 4 times?
It has passed the assembly 4 times now, correct? This last legislative session was the first time we actually had the majority in the Senate. And the only reason it wasn't called is because the Speaker of the Assembly, or the Senate Majority Leader, pulled the Health Committee because she had the votes. And there's theories as to why that would happen, that maybe some of the co-sponsors really didn't want to support the bill and went to Andrea Cousins and say, we really don't want to vote on this bill, you got to do something. Or because she was worried that it was going to pass. Either or, she's protecting the party or she's protecting the insurance company and not protecting us.
Okay, before we get into that, the total New York healthcare picture, though, let's kind of go back to your experience here, okay, in DC. Let me say some quick hellos, though. To Shane and Dolores, Holly Horn, hi Lana, and hi Dolores again, this time from YouTube. Hi Sandy Degg, and Amber Lee. Hello, Amber Lee, how are you? Great to see you.
Yeah, thank you everybody for always being here with us.
And Shane says, Scott, I love how you answered the phone and showed me the video of what was going on while you were getting arrested. I don't know anyone who answers the phone when they are being arrested. Laugh out loud.
Well, now you do.
And Holly Horn asked for a link to the Red Berets of New York.
It's on Twitter, New York Red Berets. Or is it Red Berets New York?
Red Berets.
What is it?
Sorry, Scott. Please repeat that.
That was at NY Red Berets.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so could you please tell us about the whole protesting and getting arrested experience in DC?
Yeah, it was actually a really awesome event. I work close with the Poor People Campaign, who fights very hard for single payer universal health care. This
Yes.
event here, they were actually amplifying, they were trying to force what's left of the Build Back Better bill to get passed, and as well as expanding our voting rights. As we know, we are not going to get Medicare for all passed if they strip away our voting rights. So we need to protect that very much so. And what we did is we first marched from our hotel right to the Capitol, to the park, and we had an event there. They had 30 different states being represented and a speaker from each state, which only limited them to 1 minute. Originally, they were going to have me speak and share Danny's story, but with 30 speakers with only a minute, first off, we all know I can't share Danny's story in under a minute. I
No.
can't do it justice in a minute. And, so they really couldn't fit me on this time. But from there, after we left the park, we marched up to Pennsylvania Ave, and we took over Pennsylvania Ave. We made a big circle, and no cars, no traffic was getting through. Capitol Police were quick to respond. They circled around us. We were all arrested peacefully. None of us protested. None of us went limp. We weren't trying to incite violence from the police, and they treated us with respect. It was all fairly well. We had to pay a $50 fine for, it was something like obstructing traffic or something like that, and illegal demonstration. Illegal demonstration.
Okay,
How
so in
dare
other
you?
words, obstructing traffic trumps your constitutional right to freedom of assembly in the United States today.
It really does. We actually had an event back in August in Syracuse, and we were told that our free rights aren't free, and that if we wanted to protest there at the Syracuse State Fair, that we had to we had to go and get a permission first, which required buying a permit, which is always granted after you pay the $50 fee. So you can buy your First Amendment rights in Syracuse, but not at the Capitol.
Incredible. It's a sad commentary on where the United States is today.
It truly is. It really is. Actually, as we're in our pen, they let us keep our phones, and we're, talking to, people on the phone, and the officers told us we weren't allowed to do that, that we are under arrest, and we're not allowed to protest when we're under arrest. And that includes making calls on the telephone.
Since when is making calls on the telephone a protest?
Because our voices were interfering with the work that they had to do, and that was going to take things longer, and we're interfering with their police work because our voices were too loud for them to hear each other.
I see.
So we were supposed to shut up and sit down.
How many of you did they take into custody?
I didn't get the numbers, but I'm pretty sure it was over 100.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of people in the street, and I believe the total viewer audience was $350,000 or 350,000 people online viewing the event. Yeah, so and they plan on making another event come summer, and we're hoping that the pandemic is a little bit lightened up by then, where we can get more people in the street. And they plan on doubling the size of the crowd that we had next year. It will come this summer.
June 18th, they were saying, is the plan.
I believe so, yes.
Mm-hmm. And they're not doing anything in between now and then?
I know that the state Poor People Campaign is.
But not the big one.
We've got a lot going on with the New York Health Act as well. And that's why I'm actually involved so much with the Poor People Campaign, is because the New York State chapter is so heavily involved with the New York Health Act. And it's almost like they're brother and sister.
Okay, so that's a hell of a ground game then.
It 100% is. Poor People Campaign has got a lot of work, and they got a lot of people, and they're all hurting.
Okay.
And they all would benefit greatly from Medicare for All.
100%.
Okay, let's take this as a transition to talking New York politics and what's going on with the Health Act, okay, at this point, and what actions are planned, okay, and what's in the Health Act, and what are its strengths and what are its weaknesses.
Well, as far as plans, I really have to catch up on, they just released a bunch of stuff this past week as, some of the actions that they have coming up. So I've got to research a lot of that. But if anybody's interested, you can easily go to the New York Health campaign. I think it's campaignfornewyorkhealth.com. Pretty
Okay,
sure.
good.
Yeah, they'll have all the event of their actions coming up. And it said, I know they've got a lot coming up within the next, couple of months. They just finished their week of action, but that was a predecessor because they're trying to get leaders lined up for these events that are coming up. And that's what that week of action was, trying to get people involved so they can find some leaders for more events coming up. Like we were discussing earlier, it had passed the assembly 4 times, and we only needed to get Andrea Cousins to call it for a floor vote, and she decided not to. Last week, about Saturday, I think it was Saturday, I had been down in Yonkers to visit Andrea Cousins' office to do the wheat pasting event down there. So being that I had forgotten to call her, I decided to call her from Washington, D.C. today and let her know that the New York Red Berets were absolutely responsible for those posters.
That's awesome.
Yeah, good for you.
So Scott, could you get Cousins to pull that thing and put it to a floor vote? I mean, if you could get her to do it, could it happen tomorrow, or do you have to reintroduce the legislation again?
Well, I believe it has to go through the legislative session first, and then the billing session as well. So it's going to take at least 2 years to get it fully passed, because we think we can get it through the legislative session this year, but not through the billing session. So we might have to wait till the following year for the billing session. But and I believe they also plan on a 2-year implementation. So at best, 4 years, I think, for full implementation of the bill. And yet instead of calling the bill, she calls for working groups. That was the result of our last confrontation with Andrea Cousins back in July or August, when I said that I confronted her at the Syracuse State Fair. Shortly after that interaction, the media had asked her, what's this work you're doing that you told Mr. Desnoyers that you're doing? And her response was she's going to call for working groups for the bill, which working groups was called for marijuana legalization here in New York, for raising the taxes on the rich, and for gay marriage. I mean, it's when a bill is very controversial and it's being taken serious that working groups is called on it. So
that's
it is a step forward, but it's not nearly enough.
All right, and that's just another way to slow walk it, isn't it?
100%, which is why I decided to do the posters, because that's what I told her on the phone today. I'm not okay with kicking the can down the road with just working groups. I expect the bill to be called, and my pressure will continue on her until that bill is called.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're looking at 4 years of pressure.
At least, yeah. But we also know that my work ain't done there. If we get the New York Health Act passed, unfortunately, I'm going to have to move to Washington. Because I can't work on whole Washington too well from New York State once they got healthcare here,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to have to move to Washington State to help out the whole Washington bill.
We're going to get it in Washington sooner than 4 years.
Well, if you do that, then I won't have to move there.
Yeah, but you may want to move there.
Yeah, possible.
Yeah, I don't want to move to Massachusetts. They're colder than New York. But I'll move to Massachusetts if I have to.
Yeah. Okay. So Shane is saying that there is some rumor that Chelsea Clinton's going to run for governor. Is there? Please tell me no. I'm going to take a nice pick into my eye.
I have not heard that. My God, please no.
I swear.
There are rumors that are floating around about that, but who knows if the rumors mean anything.
Well, actually, that might be beneficial to us because Governor Hochul has tapped somebody who's been very proactive in the New York Health Act. And if
Who?
she needs an ally to run against Chelsea Clinton, I can bring her the left if she supports the New York Health Act, as we all know. So that might be a good thing. We could put our support behind Hochul and get her to pass the New York Health Act. And we all know that when Hillary Clinton endorsed Nina's opponent, Nina made a lot of money. So maybe having Hillary's daughter as an opponent might be beneficial because it'll rile up the left. Just a thought.
Yeah, I think it's a good thought.
I mean, it's a great thought, and I think that there would be a lot of resistance. I truly believe that.
Yeah, I'm not really particularly afraid of Chelsea Clinton. I mean, I don't know what she has to commend her.
You don't know what she has what?
I don't know what she has to commend her. She doesn't seem to have any charisma, at all.
Does this sound familiar?
Like Ivanka Trump?
Like like Joe has any charisma? I mean, let's just be real. This is exactly what they keep giving us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what they keep on giving us. But I think that it seems to me Chelsea Clinton's a little too much for New York State. Okay, at this point.
I mean, we've rejected Hillary.
Too flat. Huh?
I said we rejected Hillary after not too long. You know?
Yes.
I think that the people are all sick and tired of the dynasty crap.
Yeah, I think so too. I know I'm sick and tired of the dynasty crap.
Yeah, I mean, when Trump was installing his children into the White House, that should have been enough of a signal then. But here we are today where we're talking about Chelsea Clinton. So I'm not really so sure.
Yes, and by the way,
it's just that it's going to be continued to be forced upon us.
But by the way,
look away.
There's also talk of Nancy Pelosi's daughter. I guess it would be Christine Pelosi, trying to become her successor as the Speaker of the House.
So the machine is going to throw millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars at that because that's what they do.
Because that is what they do. On the other hand, that doesn't always work. Millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. They back plenty of people who cannot win because they lack anything to commend them.
Well, see, and now we're getting back to if they run Chelsea in New York, are they doing that? Like, you just have to ask yourself, are they trying to lose? Because what you're going to do is pull everybody out of the woodwork, and they'll vote for anybody but her.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, but there'll be all the Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, who will vote against her. And then there will be all the Democrats who can't stand the Clintons anymore.
And the independents who can't stand them either.
Yes. And that seems to me to be a heavy majority. I don't think Chelsea Clinton has much chance to win.
Yeah, I mean, New York is so red outside of the city, it's not even funny. And all you got to do is break the city vote. As soon as you break the New York City vote, you've won.
Yep, I think that's true. There are some districts in upstate, though, that are inclining towards the progressive, aren't there?
There's a lot of people. Go ahead.
There's a lot of progressives in my area, but we don't win any elections.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably because of the fact that they're not giving us progressive candidates. I mean, Bernie won in a landslide in the primary in my district, and yet they constantly keep sending centrist because they can pick up some of the red votes. And it's always trying to pick up some of the red votes rather than trying to get new progressive voters involved.
But now the party is weaker than it has been, though, right? Because there's no Cuomo to sit on top of it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And, that it still doesn't change the demographics of the city leaders that have been in office for a while, that still think that we've got it blue no matter who.
Yeah.
They like my health representative for my district. I've sat with multiple conversations with her, and she's only one of 23 Democrats that refuse to support the New York Health Act.
Gee.
And she's still giving me all sorts of grief, saying she's not going to support it, and gives me all these lobbyist excuses. And it's because she's in a red district and she wants to keep her seat, and she's worried if she goes that far left, she's going to lose those Republican voters, as if she has any Republican voters to begin with.
So tell me, what do you think, just as an act, what is your analysis of the New York Health Act?
I do believe I'm going to put more pressure on Cousins. If we can get Cousins to call for a vote, I believe it will make it through at least the legislative session this year. I believe we can get it passed this year, but we have to put the pressure on Cousins. If she's feeling comfortable, like she can just get away with working groups this year, she'll kick the can down the road till next year. So we need to get people calling her and putting pressure on Cousins. I'm pretty sure that Carl Heastie will call it for a vote this year. He's gotten a lot of pressure from me. He heard Danny's entire story and he couldn't look me in the eye. It's passed the assembly 4 times already. And as we all know, if it gets past the assembly, it's still not a done deal. So he doesn't have to worry about it as long as Andrea Cousins doesn't call for a vote, right?
Right.
So he can call it to the assembly and still feel safe knowing that it rests on Andrea's hands.
Yeah, right. So he could be playing the nice guy and figuring that she's going to get rid of it.
Yes. And I think that I really truly believe the reason she didn't call, on top of the $500,000 in campaign donations, is because if we only have the majority support by 1 vote, if she's aware that one of those co-sponsors really isn't a co-sponsor and is just doing it for political gain,
yeah,
he might not, or she might not want to vote on that bill and have to call themselves out. And that could be the reason that she decided not to call for a vote. And if that is,
you probably have more than one.
Yeah, and that's just it. And there could have been a meeting saying, Andrea, don't do this. We don't want to vote on this.
Well, we don't want to lose our campaign donations, and we don't want to look bad to our constituents. This is the same shit that's going on up on the Hill. Same stuff.
But if we can force her to, and you guys know my tenacity, I ain't letting up.
Oh, I know that for sure, Scott.
I mean, I've called her well over 100 times. Their office knows me by name, by phone number. My phone number rings and they're like, oh yeah, that's Scott again.
Yeah, I don't even have a bill that anyone's willing to introduce again into this House or the Senate. So we gotta get back. I've got to get back on that. There's a couple of organizations that were writing legislation 3 years ago now. Obviously, nothing ever got anywhere. We had bills. They just chose not to introduce them. See, I mean, do you see the pattern? There's a definite pattern here.
Oh yeah, I definitely see the pattern.
100% a definite pattern.
So
that's why our strategy of combining all of our national efforts is such a brilliant idea. Well, I mean, we've already got the ground game fighting us nationally and every single state legislation. It's about time we caught up.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about that after this call or tomorrow morning or whatever, but I need something to talk to you about directly related to that.
Perfect. You know me, Lisa, always up for a call for you.
Yeah, yep. Well, I think you're going to like this idea.
I don't doubt it if it's an idea coming from you.
We have some things to talk about also tomorrow. of course, because we have some things for the meeting,
Yep, same stuff.
on Wednesday afternoon.
Yep.
So we have to talk about that. But I'm getting back to New York Health. The Health Act, okay, in New York is not similar to the Washington State Act. In other words, it's different, okay,
Did you
in
go through it?
critical ways. I haven't had a chance to fully go through it yet, no. Okay, but I could see enough of it to see that it's not like the Washington Act. So, Scott, what are the tricky parts, okay, of that act that we have to be careful of?
One of the things that it's written so that we can use Medicaid and Medicare funds to finance the bill. We would need a waiver from the federal government to get that through. If we don't get the waiver, another way that they've figured out for funding is they could still use Medicaid and Medicare trust funds by expanding who is approved for Medicaid, because the state can determine that, to everybody in the state, expand Medicaid to everybody in the state, and using Medicare to wrap around, and using the taxes that are generated to wrap around the rest of the Medicaid. The problem being is now you're also having to set funding for doctors, also redoing all that around your Medicaid. The other problem is the bill is written to say that everything a doctor deems medically necessary should be covered.
Yes.
But the bill doesn't describe what everything that a doctor might say is medically necessary. And people are having a problem with that because, of course, there's always sorts of issues as to what should and should not be medically necessary. Some conservatives don't believe that transgender rights, are a thing, and people shouldn't get transgender operations, and they don't want to pay for that. Other conservatives believe that in vitro fertilization is way too high of an expense to pay for everybody in the country when they don't need it.
Hmm.
So
But
these are
wouldn't they
all
be following wouldn't they be following some existing Medicare guidelines for this?
they are, but the fact that it's not written into the bill and it's just open-ended as far as whatever a doctor seems medically necessary, I think that's a perfect way to write the bill myself. I mean, there's no question. If a doctor says it's necessary, then that's what's covered, right?
Should be necessary, yeah.
But they're getting a lot of pushback from more conservative Democrats, such as my House Representative Kerry Warner, and that's one of her talking points, is that it doesn't say what is covered, even though it says everything is covered.
Joe, we got to go through this bill because I've got
Oh.
a real sneaking suspicion that that's crap, and it's just crap.
So do I.
Mm-hmm. That might just be crap, Scott.
I mean, the bill has been written for 40 years, but it really didn't gain a lot of momentum up until the past 10 or 12, where it's been starting to be reworked and have some changes made to it,
Yeah, but
So-
the funding has there's strings attached to taking federal funding and using it for healthcare because that's what it was intended to use, right? So it doesn't become a free-for-all. There's still going to be oversight. There's still going to be things that they're going to have to answer to. So we just have to look at it and see if they would still have to follow some standardized protocols, guidelines, whatever you want to call it. And they're not going to rewrite that. I mean,
Right.
that would be.
And that wraparound for the wraparound Medicaid was something that was just came up with over the past year or two, because there was concern that we might not be able to get the waiver written.
Sure.
Especially during the Trump. That's why it was written, because that wraparound, because Trump was in office at the time they started writing it, and they didn't think that Trump would give us a waiver. But I'm not so sure Joe would either.
So Joe, what is the difference then between New York and Washington? Because Washington,
are you directing that question at me?
Yeah, because I don't hear Washington talking about wanting to have to do wraparound.
The difference between Washington, okay, and New York is that or at least I think the difference is that the Washington people, okay, are proposing to act as a Medicare Advantage vendor.
No, they're not. They're using the vehicle to get the capitation into the trust. Come on.
I know, but what I'm saying is, I mean, I don't mean that they're going to be a Medicare Advantage vendor that's going to make a profit. No, they're not a profit making, but what they're going to do, okay, is to say, uh, we will be a Medicare Advantage vendor, okay, and you give the capitation to us, and we're going to expand coverage to everybody in the state. Okay, and it's going to be very high quality coverage. And this fulfills the Affordable Care Act because basically the Affordable Care Act says that if you can offer better services,
Then you are allowed.
then you are allowed to do that. Now, there would be no legal basis to deny them the opportunity to be a Medicare Advantage vendor. Now, because they would be offering lower premiums or maybe even zero premiums, they would, of course, be able to drive all the competition out of business,
Right.
all the private sector competition out of business, which is the whole secret. If it takes them a year or two to drive the competition out of business, well, by the end of the second year, they basically have a single payer plan in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
The only payer, okay, is going to be the trust. So I don't think the New York bill.
So the New York bill wasn't written to use the capitation mechanism that way.
No, I don't think so.
It was funded, supposed to be fully funded through taxes with using the waivers, to compensate the rest of it. But it said that when they found out that, they might not get the waivers, that's when they started coming up with the secondary plan to do a wraparound plan around Medicaid and Medicare. But their plan also states that once it's instituted, that there's no duplicative care being offered by insurance companies. So insurance companies would be eradicated immediately.
Right.
Right. So that's a good feature. But of course, the wraparound plan has to be approved by somebody, right?
I don't believe so. No, that would have to just on state level, because New York is allowed to determine who is or is not approved for Medicaid, or is it Medicare? One of the two, I'm not sure, but just they can expand.
Medicaid.
They can expand Medicaid to whomever they want, and therefore just use the funds like the Medicare fund they could use for the seniors and disabled and compensate that using those funds and then using taxes for the rest.
Or they could just open Medicaid up to everybody and build off of that. They could do that too.
Yeah, so that's the plan, but they still want to use those Medicare funds for those people. But they still want everybody in the same system so everybody's getting the same care, because it would be terrible if you get better treatment on New York Health Act and you can't get Medicare, or you can't get it because you have Medicare. That would be horrible.
Right. That would be horrible. Okay, so they wrote the act to avoid that possibility.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I get it. But there's some pretty standard, I'm starting to realize that there's some standard, there's ways of doing this, right? The ease and the politics around why you would go one way or another is I'm starting to put some context around that as to why. Plus, you've had this bill pass the House and the Senate, State House, State Senate, so many times that you don't want to go in and do a major overhaul. It might pull back support, and I understand that too.
Scott, so Anna says that you need to drink some water.
I will definitely do that, sweetheart. That's why I get off the call.
Okay, so of course I had to convey that message to you. So The funding of the New York Act is different, though, isn't it?
Well, I said, yeah, it's a tax. I believe it was a payroll tax or an income tax, not a payroll, an income tax.
Right, it's an income tax, right?
And it's progressive, which means the richer pay more. And I believe the numbers show that not the top 1%, but the top 10% earners of New York will actually be paying more for their health care, which, that's going to be a hard pill to swallow for millionaires. But I mean, the 90% on the bottom, those people will be paying less or the same and getting better care because everything that is medically necessary will be covered. There'll be no copays, no premiums, no deductibles. And I believe, I'm not totally sure, but I believe there's a prescription part of the plan as well, but I got to double check into that.
Right. Will there be any business taxes to support it?
I believe it's just the progressive income tax, but I could be wrong. I haven't dove that much into. I really need to hook you up with Dr. Jolly, and have him get on because he's gone over all the figures and numbers and all the. I definitely got to get him on the show with you.
Right. Okay. So that's a difference from the Washington plan, which has the employers paying a considerable tax, but it's still a good trade-off before the employers because the percentage of the payroll that's taken up but through health insurance now is far greater than the payroll tax on the employers.
There's got to be a payroll tax, Joe. It wouldn't, or an employer tax. There would have to be.
I mean, yeah,
I don't know if there is in New York. I don't know if there's an employer tax in New York.
It'd have to be.
It said I haven't heard of it. I just heard an income tax that's progressive to the higher incomes.
There might be an income tax on the businesses as well.
That's a good possibility. Yes. But I do know it said everybody's supposed, the top 10% are the only ones that are supposed to end up paying more. Not to mention that there's a bunch of other savings that we've all found. Car insurance should drop because they're not going to have to cover health liability for car insurance.
Oh.
Same with your home insurance. All you municipalities that are paying super huge payments for their school insurance, health insurance, their DPW insurance, all of that will all go away from the municipalities as well. So I mean, there's going to be savings across the board for all these people. And if they're saving on municipality, DPW, and school workers, then those businesses are going to pay less taxes for that and save money there.
Yeah, so there are going to be a lot of savings for a lot of people from this bill. Okay,
Yeah.
and that way it's a good bill. But the fact that it's an income tax, and a progressive tax, okay, at that, gives some people the willies and brings out the opponents, right?
Well, I would, just from a personal standpoint, I would hate to think of having to come up with that kind of money at the end of the year.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would think that too. But if the tax is based, on income, then usually they collect that through withholding of some sort, right?
Oh, I see. So it will be a payroll withholding.
Right. And furthermore, I mean,
Not a payroll tax in the sense of, yeah, it's a withholding tax, but it's based on income. Okay, it's not based on a fixed amount, okay, of payroll.
yeah, and also these companies wouldn't be paying their premiums for their employees' health insurance, that they'd be able to roll that money into their savings for their taxes.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything that doesn't like cut it in half at least for businesses.
Yeah, it seems like there would be big savings there too.
Yeah, and
I'm kind of amazed
to get to the business.
doing the insurance for car insurance. Like that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Say that last again, Lisa.
I'm surprised that they're taking the injury out of your car insurance with this.
Well, the bill doesn't say that, but I'm saying that if you have health coverage for everybody, your car insurance wouldn't need to cover it anymore, right? So therefore, it should automatically drop down if they don't have to pay health coverage for liability.
Yes, it should.
And that goes across also the same with your home mortgage and every other insurance that covers liability.
I don't know. I'm going to have to look at it because they call that out as not something that you're going to deal with in the Washington State and I think it was Washington State. Maybe it was Medicare. But all of those mechanisms are going to stay in place.
We're going to have to go over that bill carefully.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I mean,
And I think we prioritize that.
So I'm just looking at it, it would make logical sense if everything's already covered in New York, that you shouldn't have to pay for health coverage on your car insurance or your mortgage.
Sure.
But then you would have to the insurance, I don't know. That's a big change. Because that underwrites.
I mean, then it would no longer be single payer if you're having an insurance company pay for your accident because you were in a car. Because you would have insurance companies still involved. So it wouldn't be a legitimate single payer at that point anymore.
No.
And again, I'm not a guru with, all the, policies. So, and I'm just spitballing my opinion here, I suppose.
No, I mean, it's a beautiful thought. It's a beautiful thing. I'm curious now. I'm really curious if that's in there because I had that same thought process when we first started talking about this stuff before I actually got into the bills. But when it first came about, I was like, wow, to cover everybody, does workman's comp go away?
Right.
But,
yeah. I mean, the thought is if everybody in New York is covered, and you get in a car accident and you're having a car insurance pay the bill, then it would have to get billed separately than every other, medical condition. And they'd have to have a separate system just set up for car injuries. And then you'd also have to have another one for mortgage. Anybody that gets caught in a house fire where the mortgage insurance is supposed to pay for it, it would be a separate billing site system for that as well. And that would definitely complicate things. And my thought on that.
Yeah, there's still liability there though that, even though you're covered, right? There's still liability for costs.
Yeah, I mean, the insurance companies might decide no matter what, I'm still charging you, even though you'll never use it. And that's why I could just make money off of it.
Oh, I do that now anyway. I'm so cynical, aren't I? I hate, they should all have been abolished long ago.
Yeah, well, we have to be cynical because we have to be careful. I shouldn't say cynical. We have to be skeptical, and that should lead us to be careful. Skeptical is a little different from cynical.
Shall we say know your enemy?
What'd you say?
I said we should say we need to know our enemy.
Exactly.
Mm.
And we need to know the tricks that they're going to try to play on us.
Yeah, because so far they've had us outmaneuvered 10-1.
Yeah.
1,000,000 to 1.
Yeah.
Which is because they've outspent us also 1,000,000 to 1.
So Sandy's asking what happens if you have an accident out of state. And I don't have the answer to that except to say that I think it depends on plan by plan. And I don't even remember. We had talked about that at one point, Joe, with one of the plans, and I'm not sure I don't remember how that went. Like if you have to use your medical when you're on vacation, what happens?
Yes, I think there was certainly something in the Washington bill that covered that.
Yeah, they did cover it, but I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, I can't remember it exactly either.
Now, what was the question?
Okay, the question is, when you're traveling outside of your state and you get into an accident and you have a healthcare problem,
Yeah, actually, that was a problem that was the biggest problem with the Vermont bill that failed. It was only in for 1 year, and because they didn't consider what at that point would be considered out of network. Out of network would be somebody coming in from out of state, getting injured inside of Vermont, or somebody from Vermont traveling out of state.
Right.
Nobody in Vermont would cover any outside insurance, so everybody that was out of state had to pay out of pocket. Anybody that left Vermont, Vermont insurance didn't cover them out of state, so they had to pay out of pocket. You know, it wasn't, and then they instead drafted up the narrative that it was underfunded and not poorly written. And New York,
Oh, is that what did it?
that is what they did. They said that the bill was underfunded, there wasn't enough money, and which is only a narrative from the perspective that they didn't write in the bill enough to cover out of network people. So it was only a half truth because it was just poorly written. New York Health Act has understood their mistake and has redone their bill to make sure that they don't make the same mistake that Vermont did. So I don't know if Georgia has considered that with the whole Washington bill, but it's definitely something she needs to consider.
Oh yeah, that has been considered, and there is a provision in the whole Washington bill that takes care of that.
Excellent, excellent.
I mean, I'm certain of that. I don't recall the exact details of how it's taken care of, but I recall that I read that and I noted at the time that the arrangements they'd made for that were very, very good.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, and that's just it. We need everyone that is saying that if we fail on a state-based legislation, it would hurt the national effort. And that is so not true, because if Vermont didn't fail first, we wouldn't have known why it failed and wouldn't have been able to approve our current bills.
Well, it was really never tried in, in Vermont. They did studies of it, and they used a model from, I think his name is Gerber, Scott Gerber.
It sounds familiar.
They used his simulation model to evaluate whether it was going to be economically feasible. And of course, he was one of the major people in back of the Affordable Care Act. So his model was not exactly going to be a model that would be friendly to Medicare for all. That one can, see immediately. I think Shumlin kind of fixed it that way. When he brought him in as a consultant, he knew what he was getting. I don't think Shumlin actually wanted to pass a Medicare for all bill in Vermont.
Isn't it
The
the
governor,
get elected?
he was the governor at the time, Peter Shumlin.
So I think what we have to really understand about all of this is that the more experience that has taken place, the more rewrites of a bill, a state-based bill, the more thought that's been put into it, the better chances you are at not running into something that is going to be, a complete failure. I think the other thing that we have to keep in mind, though, things to consider, is that you have to understand that if you find out that there's something that needs amended, you've got to be able to make that happen quickly, right?
Right, and that is hard to do unless you have control when it comes to the machinery of the Senate, or the machinery of the House. If it's still in the hands of the opposition, then you won't be able to act quickly, because they'll try to use that to block you if you have a problem with the bill and you want to fix it.
Well, and then that got me thinking about how you could do something where you put the governance around that. If you could put it through the state insurance commissioner somehow, so that you didn't have to go through the whole session and then the session and then the session and then the session and blah 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 blah. You know what I mean? Just stuff.
Yeah, if the insurance commissioner had authority to fix problems like that.
You'd have to write it in, and you'd have to think it. You'd have to think it through. But yes, because then you could have it under the insurance commissioner. I'm just trying to figure out how to not have to, like, because you won't get it through if people don't like it, right?
Yes, yes.
That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And if it's something that you have to have done quickly, you've got to have some other mechanism.
Yeah, in New York, our legislative and budget session overlaps for only, I believe, like 4 weeks. So within that 4 weeks, we can get a lot done because both the legislative and the budget session are both in at the same time. But once the legislative session ends, you can't get anything done that hasn't been introduced, obviously. So, and that's why I'm saying it'll be at least 2 years before we get it. Because my thought is, if we don't get it in the legislative session now we got to wait till next year. Because they're not going to call it the budget session until it passes the legislative first, It's kind of backwards that way. So, but if it was called and passed early in the legislative session, then you still have time to get it through the budget session in the same year, because the budget session extends beyond the legislative.
Right. So you have to make that happen somehow now. Right?
Now. And that's why those posters came 1 week after, or 2 weeks after working groups was announced, or whatever it was, because it's not enough. It needs to be now.
Right. What kind of a reaction have people had to that?
I've had a lot of mixed reactions. As we all know, when we did it to Annette Cleveland, we didn't get much pushback. I mean, everybody thought it was a great action. But when I heralded the action for Senator Andrea Cousins, I caught a lot of pushback. And this is coming from a lot of centrist, blue no matter who, that were warning me that this could be considered racist because it was a woman of color in power on a wanted poster, like the old Western, I mean, you know what? She is wanted. She's wanted for colluding with the murderers of 68,000 lives every single year.
Yes.
And we didn't ask for a call for violence. We didn't have a target on her face. We didn't say wanted dead or alive. We say we wanted her for collusion and to call her. 100% pick up a phone and call her.
Yeah, so you were careful about your wording.
Yes, and there was nothing racist about it, any more than racist than putting Annette Cleveland on the front of it.
Well, and the identity
it was Lewis that said to us that it would be immoral and racist if I held Andrea to a lower standard of morals than I did Annette Cleveland because of the color of her skin.
Yeah, Lewis was really good with that one. I was very, very happy when he pulled that out. I was like, oh,
100% agree.
Yeah, I think Lewis is a pretty good addition to the team, isn't he?
He is.
I love
one of the unicorns, right?
I love him. He's awesome. We need like 100,000 more Lewises.
Yeah, I mean, it was 1 week after that I started the New York chapter that he's like, okay, yeah, I'm a New York Red Beret, and guess what? I'm starting this crafting circle. Everybody get in. It was like a week after. It's like, yeah, the New York Red Berets are doing a crafting circle. Let's
yeah,
do
I know, that was fantastic. That was really well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a big success. I mean, we had a lot of great conversations. It was very fluid. I mean, we didn't need an MC to conduct our call. Everybody was able to speak that wanted to, you know? It was awesome.
Yeah, I know, it was very well done. Yeah, the conversations were very smooth. The spirit was very good. It was, really a magnificent call.
Well, we can do that. We can do more of those. I'd like to do one in Pennsylvania and try to organize a crafting circle where I could get some attention and get some ladies, because we need to start knitting some berets. I mean, that's where it starts.
I found a couple of knitters in my networking, by the way, down here in DC.
Did
One is a
you?
doctor that she's going to join the New York Red Berets. We exchange contact information.
Nice.
When I get a picture of her, I'll send her out on Twitter.
Great.
That's great.
It's great.
Are you still in
Three
DC?
people, and three
Yeah,
other
he's in a
people.
hotel.
Yeah, I'm still in DC at the hotel.
How come?
I had to wait till today to pay the $50 fine. You have to
Oh.
wait 24 hours after getting arrested. And then they wanted to make sure there was enough time to get me on my plane. They didn't want me trying to race to the plane and missing it. So they wanted to make sure everybody had enough time to pay their fines. And the Poor People Campaign paid all of our fines for us. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Wow.
they paid our hotel fare. They paid our travel expenses. They gave us money for food and paid our bail money.
Wow.
Oh, that was great.
100%, because we all know that I can't do these without other people's help.
Sure.
So, and that I thank every activist every day that donates to a cause to get us where we need to get.
Wow.
So,
That's
Lisa,
amazing.
when can we have the knit-in circle for Pennsylvania?
Not until after the holidays.
Well,
I haven't bought a
obviously it can't be till after the holidays.
I haven't. If you only knew how far behind I am, I've got family coming from all over the world, and I don't have a gift, not one. So I like,
Oh, so you have to run around yet and get gifts?
oh yeah, yeah, I have a tree up. I don't
I
even have
saw
a
that.
tree.
I thought it was lovely.
Huh?
Give them all red berets.
Yeah. Well, I would have to make them.
Put a call out. There'll be red berets in your door next week.
I don't. Yeah. I don't know that would be looked at as a great gift from mom this year.
Come on, Mom.
No, I mean I can give them to my friends for sure. I just have to remember everybody that I've given one to before. But anyhow, back to doing a circle for Pennsylvania. I want to put together a room out, just a group out on Twitter, and see if I can get some excitement to spread the word in Pennsylvania. I've got to hook up with some folks that I know from Philly, and see if they'll help, because we need to get feet on the ground. And, berets on their heads, feet on the ground. They kind of translate. Not everybody's going to be feet on the ground. Not everybody's going to be a knitter, but we all work together, right? So I think it's really cool, though, that what came out of that crafting circle and what Lewis has brought to the table is a whole other dimension of folks that we weren't tapped into at all, because he's coming from a different political spectrum, and he just tapped right in. He's like, "This is great. I totally get this. You guys are all working on healthcare," and he runs in those circles out on social media. So today we had a guy who came in, and did you see it, Scott? He's got a guy that has like 50,000 followers.
I did not. I've kind of been detached from social media while I'm in DC.
Anyhow, it's bringing in a lot of people that we would not have run across otherwise.
Awesome.
Right? And they're looking at it from the same perspective that Lewis saw it from, which is these people are just working to get people health care. And wait a minute, they're not an organization that raises, we're not getting paid to do this, right? And they love that, which is exactly why we did it this way, right? I mean, we talked about this. It comes up every other week, and we're always just like, yep, nope, it's working this way. It can be replicated this way. This is the way we're going to do it. We're not going to go through, slowing down to a grinding halt because we've got to figure out the organizational structure. Nope, don't need that, right? And that's really appealing to people. It really is appealing to people, and I think we're really going to be able to grow. We just need to get a little bit more organized. I need to get some more people in my area, some people in Philly, some people up in Erie, and I can do that. That's going to be like my first quarter endeavor, is to try to find actual people in different counties. And then I'm going to start working at bringing in coalitions here in the state. People who have worked on single payer legislation before and maybe walked away from it. But if they still believe in the single payer avenue, I know they're not doing anything. I'm going to find out where those people are. I'm going to bring them in. That's my plan anyway.
That sounds reasonable,
Yeah, I got to start somewhere.
but not until after the holidays.
Right.
Not after the holidays.
It's just too, yeah, I don't even know how I'm going to do this.
And I don't mean to run off on you guys real quick, but it is 10 o'clock on this coast, as you know, Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been going all day, and I'm going to have to let you go early tonight.
Sleep well. So you leave tomorrow?
Okay, that's fine.
When do you leave?
When do I leave? I leave here at noon. It's a little afternoon because I land at 4:20, so I think it should be like around 3 o'clock that I leave here. So I got some time for sightseeing in the morning, I guess.
Yeah, sleeping.
Sleeping in. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I've seen the Washington Monument already.
Well, I'm glad you went, Scott.
I'm glad I was here. I mean, it's always, even though I didn't get to speak, all that imagery will be used to fight for Medicare for all. You know,
Right.
and
yeah.
the solidarity that the Poor People Campaign and we share together, will just continue to forge an alliance even further in the future. So yeah, this has been a great event, and I'm proud to be standing with the Poor People's Campaign. I'm proud that they stand with us.
I think they'd be a tremendous asset
They really are. I mean, they've got
over time.
incredible fighters all down the line, and I have not met one single person in there that I've disliked. And we know we always meet people that we dislike in different groups, and we just pretend we don't.
You know what though? They've always, every time I've run into the Poor People's Campaign, it's always been like inspiring.
100%.
Effective, friendly, dead on.
Lots of music.
Yep.
Good vibes too. Not crappy music. Good vibes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and the good vibes are coming from the Reverend as well.
100%. The Reverend is beast. I love him.
Did you meet him today or yesterday?
I didn't meet him today. I met him a couple years ago at my very first New York Health Act rally in Albany. And he really didn't know me that well, and we all know my hashtag Danny Strong, and he referred to me as Mr. Strong, which that is not the worst thing I've been called.
Love it. Love it. That's wonderful.
All right, people. I will see you soon, I'm sure. Good night. Thank you guys for having me on.
Hey, thanks for coming, Scott.
Much love.
Even with the headache. Take care.
Okay, so Lisa, let's sort of continue this conversation along another track for just a minute. Okay, which is you were very enthusiastic, okay, at one time about having a summit over student debt cancellation. Is that still in your plans?
It could be. Oh, Joe, there's just only so many hours in the day, but here's what I'm going to say. If we're going to put together a cancel student debt summit and I can help, that would be great. But because now's the time. Now is the time. You've got senators and Congress people, and there's more and more activity now coming out about the student debt crisis. People are going to have to start paying at the end of February.
Actually, the end of January, February 1st.
End of January. And
February 1st is when they start again.
And it is important that we raise awareness on it. But I have to scale back on the amount of work that I'm doing. The amount of hours that I'm putting in right now is a lot.
I know you do.
So, yes, I think it would be a great thing for people to do. I think that it is. What are they running on? I don't know what the Democrats are going to run on. They need to do something like this because Build Back
Well,
Better is not it.
During 2009, 2010, that exactly the same problem. That
Yeah.
they didn't really know exactly what they were going to run on because most of their efforts in 2009 had failed.
Mhm.
So they were still boxed in on the Affordable Care Act. And so Nancy Pelosi pulled the rabbit out of the hat and she got that act actually passed. And we all know it was a piece of crap. But they thought they could run on that piece of crap. And they made a horrendous miscalculation. And they got slaughtered in the House because they made that particular miscalculation. I see them as making similar miscalculations now on the overrating the popularity of what they've done so far, okay, and overrating the popularity of what they may be going to do. For example, if they do get the Build Back Better Act through, I think they're thinking they can run on that. I don't think they can run on that because I don't think it's good enough, and I think they're about to make another miscalculation on that.
I think they would have been better off if they just let that whole BBB die. We would. I really do. Politically, if they're going to resurrect that whole mess, because it's kind of died out over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's kind of died out right over the last couple of weeks, but they should have let the infrastructure bill but die too.
Well, yeah. I mean, we should
Because
have
they
killed
can't
that.
run on that. They can't run on that. They should have put their foot down and said it's 3.5 trillion or nothing. That's what they should have said.
I just am
Yeah.
desperately trying to figure out what the political advisors. Joe, what's going on just doesn't make any political sense to me. They would have to be idiots to do this unless there is some purposeful purpose for this. It doesn't make any sense, Joe.
Yeah, but we were thinking like this in 2009 and 2010 as well. We were looking at what they'd done, and we were seeing ourselves, what the hell are they going to run on? I mean,
I'm going to say it again. It doesn't matter if it was Joe, they know this.
and I'm saying they knew it in 2009 and 2010 too, but they deceived themselves.
I don't think they're deceiving themselves. I think the only people they're deceiving is their constituents.
Well, they're trying to deceive their constituents, but they didn't deceive their constituents in 2010. They got slaughtered. Okay, and I'm afraid that's likely to happen now. The solution is in Biden's grasp.
Yeah, cancel student debt. There's a lot of things that he can do with a pen that he doesn't have to go through this political kabuki theater thing.
Right, and he needs to do all those things. And if he did all those things, then there might be a chance for the Democrats to win something in 2022.
Well, so here's what I think, truthfully, and I've told you this. If he canceled student debt, all of it, unconditionally, canceled it, wiped it out,
Yeah.
I really think they'd have a chance.
I think they'd have a chance too because they'd immediately have 46 million voters on their side, 45 million voters.
That otherwise probably wouldn't be. Not all of them, but a good majority of them.
In the circumstances we are in now, where they are failing to do anything about student debt and have been failing to do anything about it for so long, and Biden keeps saying that he's not going to do it. Uh, in that situation, there you have an alienation situation. In other words, the people wanted it, and he's telling them, no, I'm not for this, for no apparent reason. It makes absolutely no sense. And if people go into the next election with that as their attitude, then those 45 million people, I mean, I don't know if any of them are going to be for the Democrats.
I sincerely doubt it. I didn't realize that people's student loan payments had been in suspension for 2 years already. I read that. Has it been that long?
I'm not sure if it's been that long, but yeah, it's been in suspension for a considerable time, and people are now used to living without having to make that payment. And then if you take that away from them, they're going to hate you.
Oh, yeah, they're going to hate you.
I mean, because you're going to stick them into a suffering situation that they haven't had before. So
I just can't, Joe. It blows my mind how ridiculously stupid this is for them.
it blows my mind too. And I don't understand who is telling them not to forgive student debt. I don't understand why they have any weight in the administration, at all. I mean, if I were the president and I were in this situation and someone came to me with this, I mean, I'd kick them out of the office. It's so stupid.
Well, see, but I don't get the feeling that happens. Joe Biden has always been the bipartisanship guy, right? Always, his whole career. You've got to get the Republicans and the Democrats to agree. That's how he works at it. So who is telling Joe that this is a terrible idea is the other side of the aisle, per se, right? And I'm sure a lot of the dinos don't think, well, Nancy is not for canceling student debt either.
I don't know whether Nancy is not for canceling
Oh,
student
she
debt.
is. She's been to the podium about it.
Yeah, I'm not saying she hasn't been to the podium about it. I know what she's been saying. What I'm saying is that I'm not sure that she's saying that because Biden has been saying that. She always lines up, behind the president. She's a presidential party person. That's the kind of politics that she plays. She's a donor person and a presidential party person. So I don't know if that's what she thinks herself, whether she thinks it's smart politics or it's just her, lining up, in back of her president. She was arguing at the progressives, these last months that they owed loyalty to Joe Biden.
I think that's I think that's I think that's exactly what went on with Congress. I think Nancy was running around saying that we had to get behind the president because we had, you know, because of the disaster we had before. I could sense it. I mean, that's why Medicare for all went away because Biden said he was going to veto it. So it didn't make the platform. So when everybody who ran on it and was elected when they ran on Medicare for all, they weren't allowed to talk about it, weren't allowed to tweet about it, nothing, right? It just sort of went away.
Yep, and they all made the mistake of listening, of caving. If they had kept up the pressure, on Medicare for all, then Pelosi and Biden would have changed their tune, or they would have seen the split of the party. And I have a feeling if they were looking at the split of the party, that they would have caved because neither of them impress me as particularly brave people. I may be off base about that, but that's what I think of them.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I keep scratching my head trying to figure out. They don't care I just feel like they really just don't care. They've got their agenda, they've got their special interests, they have their donor base, they have their parties, they have their wealth, they have their stature, and we're not getting through.
Yes, I know.
which, you know,
Yes, I know we're not getting through. That's why I've got that other program on Wednesday nights.
dump the incumbents.
Yeah.
Yep, yep. I think that I'm sad at this point about it. I'm right at this moment. I can't even be angry anymore. I'm just sad because I feel that as I go through this and analyze it back, you saying, they pulled the same thing in 2010. I just can't give them I'm not even going to give them the excuse of just being that inept, that out of touch. It's deliberate. I mean, it's just been too repetitive over too much time. It's deliberate. Kind of like
What's puzzling is why the progressive Democrats, who had seen the way this went down in 2009, 2010, why they played the same role this time around. They evidently didn't learn anything.
well, I don't know specifically because Citizens United just passed in 2010 January,
Yeah.
but Citizens United made a mess of this to the point where it's evident, I think, to everyone. Okay. So what happened in 10, I think, corporations were really starting to come up, the Wall Street, the wealth, the
Yeah.
tech.
Obama could have done something about that.
Oh, sure he could have.
He could have done something instantly about that.
What do you mean, Citizens United, or what do you mean?
Yeah, Citizens United. He could have passed new campaign finance laws
Mm.
and used Article 3, Section 2 to strip the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court but from them. And he also could have passed the court packing laws then, too, because he had a huge majority in the House. And he also had very close to a filibuster proof majority
Mhm.
in the Senate.
But he didn't, and he didn't want to,
Which
right?
is why we're sitting where we are today with the wealthy and the corporations completely controlling the political system.
Everything.
That is why we're sitting where we need to dump the incumbents,
Yep,
I think.
I think so. I mean, we've got to do something.
So let's check out what our folks are saying here tonight. By the way, everybody, there is a Dump the Incumbent show tomorrow, and there's going to be open talk again. We're going to try to make it work better this time than we did the first time around. So I'm going back to the beginning and I'm finding the highlights. So Shane says, I don't think the current governor will support the Medicare for all on the state level. Also, my sources in the New York DNC told me Chelsea Clinton is probably going to run for governor. But doubt she would either. I'm not sure about the coherence of that particular sentence, Shane, but okay. And Sandy says, hi, Lana Dolores and Amber Lee. People greet each other. So Anna's here, and she says, damn straight. And Kay Ryan doesn't like that Chelsea Clinton may run. Sandy doesn't like it either. Says, yuck. And Shane says, I had a meeting this morning with some of my New York DNC contacts. So he repeats what he said earlier.
Joe, I'll be right back.
Okay. See you, Lisa. And Shane says, my contacts are 80% sure Chelsea will run. And me either, Sandy. I would not either, Sandy. Sandy says, or the ice cream princess. Shane says, New York doesn't like the Clintons. Well, maybe they won't win this time then if New York doesn't like them. Evelyn says, did Chelsea have a mind of her own, or she is a loyal extension of her mother? I believe she's a loyal extension of her mother. If I had to answer that question, that's the way I would answer it. Evelina. And Shane says, when Cuomo left, all the puppet strings were cut. He had his hand in everything on every level. Well, that's good. And Kay says, Tom Hartman had a woman in the other day talking about the way they're trying to privatize all of Medicare through DCEs. Yeah, he probably had the other day, I think it was Anna Malinow, who's been leading the charge against the DCEs. I think that's who he had in. Yes, there was actually an announcement today, or a message I got, from PNHP, and they were very happy at this point because they think they've stopped the progress of the DCE movement, at least for the time being. There was an article about that today. So that is good news. But of course, the momentum could start again, at any time, as long as they have Liz Fowler in there. She'll be pushing for it to start up again. She won't stop. I mean, she wants to make another few million after she leaves, and she goes back into the private sector. And if she can get all that money for the DCEs, that's what's going to happen. And Anna points out that Lisa's tree is beautiful. I think it's beautiful too. Sandy Degg says, Sandy says, they're so self-absorbed, they think their ideas are great. Holly Horsned says, things are not looking good for Dems. And Kay says, agree, Sandy and Holly. Kay says, I hated voting for Biden. Holly says, clueless Congress and dump, hashtag dump the incumbents. I think so. Sandy says, they don't owe him anything. He owes us. They don't care. They're getting paid well by corporations. Yes, he does, Sandy. Yeah, that's another thing that I can't understand. I understand people are getting paid well by corporations, but I also understand that the earth for human habitation is coming to an end. And I can't see why that doesn't trump everything for people. I don't understand that. Some of the people we're talking about, hi, honey.
Hi.
Thank you. It was time for our wine. So Bonnie was bringing me some. So Holly says, it'll be fine, Joe. What will be fine? I don't know how fine things will be, Holly. I mean, I got grandchildren. I want them to have a life. Kay says, exactly, Sandy, why I call him Obama. Holly Horn says, Obama. Lana says, open talk. Oh boy, laugh out loud. You missed the first open talk session, Lana. That was on Wednesday night. We had a little fireworks there too. Okay, I ended by throwing somebody out. It wasn't that, she was so off base. We shared a lot of assumptions, but you're talking about, I think, about her handle, was Lucky Burrito. That was her handle, her Twitter handle. We shared a lot of assumptions, but she has abandoned all hope that elections can affect the situation. Even if it's elections that are marked by a solid attempt to disrupt the system, the legislative systems. Okay, I don't know if Lisa is going to come back, but we are right now at the end of the comments. So I'm just going to say we're going to have the open talk again tomorrow. We still have 3 issues to resolve that we want your help with from the original Dump the Incumbents presentation. We want to make some points, okay, tomorrow, and we want your help, okay, in making those points. Then, assuming we finish, what we'll do is next Wednesday we start conversations with various people, conversations about Dump the Incumbents, to find out what people think about it, to make the case for Dump the Incumbents, and to continue to get support for Dump the Incumbents. Sandy Degg says the billionaires are all going to live in outer space, leaving the peons on the earth to die. And Kay says, thank you, Joe and all. Love these discussions. Love you all, and we love you, Kay. Lana says, we went back and replayed that. So what did you think, Lana? There's Lisa. Hello.
Hi, transitions around here are a little tough with the dog right now. He just got neutered. He's not doing so good. And then my husband.
Yeah, I know. It's real tough for him.
It's even harder now because I've got a dog that's on tranquilizers and he gets all excited when his daddy comes home. And it's like, oh, Louis, don't run down the stairs.
So Lana says that apparently Lucky Burrito and husband are also with KRDD Media. Is Larry Cutler her husband? It wasn't clear to me. I mean, I knew there was a relationship between them that was very close, but I wasn't clear that Larry. I'm sorry, Steve Cutler. That
I was going to say
her husband. I'm sorry. What was that?
I'm not. When you said Larry Cutler, I was like, wait, who is that?
Yeah. No, okay, there were 2 people who joined the open talk yesterday. One was Steve Cutler, and the other, okay, was Lucky Burrito. And evidently, Lucky Burrito is Steve Cutler's wife.
Dewey asks when our next knitting circle is going to be. Last Friday, he said it was great on the Friday. It was great knitting on Friday. When is the next time? It's being planned, but I don't have a hard date yet, so just stay tuned.
Okay, so it's being planned with Lewis?
I'm not sure. I heard several things, but nothing's concrete yet.
Okay. Okay, that was Dewey Donahue. Hi, Dewey. And Lana said, hey, he seemed reasonable to talk to. She was kind of obnoxious. Yeah, she was, but I think that was actually my fault. I needed to set some ground rules before the open talk actually started. You know, relatively simple ground rules, but ground rules that stop things devolving into a conversation between 2 people. when there are four people, sitting around the table. We can't have that. We need to have conversations and, not argumentative exchanges between two people. Dude Donahue said it was great knitting on Friday. When is the next time? Holly says, but Dewey Donahue, it was fun. Ghost said, sorry, won't be chiming in tonight. Too much pain. Here comes rain. At PC needs reboot to play. Vdo too bright, too much. Can't. You got this. Sorry to hear it, Ghost Star. Dewey Donahue said, I will keep my ear to the ground. Sandy Degg says, feel better, Steve. Yep, feel better, Steve, indeed. And Holly says, not sure what Holly says because my scroll bar has stopped working. Well, maybe I'll just show the comment.
I think she's reiterating feel better, Steve.
Yeah, I think so.
Steve, it sounds like maybe you've got a headache. I'm sorry. I've heard a lot of people in the last couple of days with headaches, and with the barometric pressure dropping because of that storm front that pulled through in that caused all those tornadoes. I heard a lot of people talking about headaches.
That might have been in back of Scott's headache that he started the program with, but evidently, thankfully, seemed to get better as the program went on. And Lana says, good night, Steve. Hope you feel better. Holly says, what Sandy said. Okay, so I think we're about there. We will be having open talk tomorrow, and we promise you a good show on Thursday, and then on Saturday for the in-depth show. So everybody, thank you for coming.
Yeah, stay tuned because we're going to be starting to do some real work on the through the states initiatives. We're going to try and mobilize some folks.
Yeah, we're going to try to mobilize some folks on that, and we're also going to try to mobilize ourselves in order to get on top of the legislative issues in those states as well, because every state's bill is a little different, and there are going to be little traps most likely, okay, in each one. So thank you everyone for coming, and we will see you soon.
Bye, everybody.
Okay, good night, everybody, and good night, Lisa. Okay, I hope your dog is feeling better tomorrow.
He's better today. I figure a couple days. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, that's good.
And Joe, we'll work tomorrow, right?
We have to work tomorrow on our meeting tomorrow afternoon.
Yep.
And so I will be available. When will you be available?
Mornings are always best.
Okay.
So I know your mornings are later than mine, but the earlier the better. Whenever is early for you.
Okay. Well, we've been trying to, get it earlier in the morning. So I may be available earlier than usual tomorrow morning.
Just give me a holler.
I will.
Good night.
Good night. Okay.